A much younger-looking President Obama as he took office 8 years ago. This is, of course, his last weekend in the White House, and from foreign policy to environmental issues, the president is making a number of controversial last-minute moves that could be very difficult for President-elect Trump to undo if he so chooses. Richard Benedetto has studied presidents up close as a White House reporter and columnist at USA Today, recently penned a column titled, "How Can We Miss a President That Won't Go Away?" and now teaches the next crop of journalists who will be covering this White House. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
You think about the last couple of weeks of this administration, major change when it comes to U.S. policy towards Israel, the naming of a number of federal monuments that even the governors and senators from those states don't want, the change this week in the wet foot, dry foot policy as it relates to Cuba. A number of these things are going to be difficult to undo. Have we ever seen a president in the last couple of weeks of office go for it in this way to try and make things difficult, if you will, for the guy coming in next?
Not in recent memory that we could think back, probably to President Eisenhower at least, that things like that didn't happen. We see that this president doesn't seem to want to leave the stage, and he wants to have impact even after his presidency, and these are examples of him trying to maintain that.
We heard from the president, just to your point, in his going away address earlier this week on Tuesday, when he said, "I'm going to still be part of the conversation. I am going to still argue passionately for the things that I believe in." A very different goodbye than, say, we got from George W. Bush, who went to Texas and started painting. The question is this: as you look back to, say, Richard Neustadt, the great political scientist, who said the real power of the presidency is the power of persuasion. Does President Obama keep that power of persuasion once he leaves office?
I think so. I think the fact that he's staying here in Washington, one, will make him a player in all of the debate that's going to be coming up on everything from health care to foreign policy. The Democratic Party is kind of rudderless right now and doesn't have really a visible leader, a strong visible leader. They will look to him, because he's staying in Washington, to take that position and be kind of the de facto head of the Democratic Party and carry that message for them.
It's interesting, though, you think about that from the Democrats' perspective. He was the man making the case, really, for Hillary Clinton, and he made the case for his view of the liberal order as he saw it, and a continuation of his presidency this election. He really made this election about a referendum on his presidency, and he lost. Do you think that resonates with him at all, or is he simply going to just ignore that, and for that matter, do the Democrats ignore that too?
I don't think President Obama or most of the Democrats in this city really think that they lost this election yet. They're really kind of fighting the results.
I've got news for them on Friday.
Yeah, I know that, but they still want to. They still want to believe that we really didn't lose, and therefore we have a message to sell, we have principles to sell, and we're going to continue to try to sell them. And they don't believe that, even though Democrats have not fared well in the election booth under President Obama, they don't believe that he's the cause of that problem. And so as long as they don't believe he's the cause of that problem, they're going to want to continue to have him be their spokesperson.
Is there, as you look back in history and from your time covering the presidency, it doesn't seem as though there's ever been a precedent for a president to stay in Washington, or for that matter to really make an attempt to become part of the conversation again.
No, there doesn't. And one of the traditions has been all the way back to George Washington, who really wanted to leave town. And while he didn't leave very far from Washington, he went back to Mount Vernon. He was not looking over the shoulder of John Adams, who took over after him, at all. The tradition was that the presidents really kind of fade away and don't participate. Now, over the years, presidents have relied on ex-presidents to give them advice privately, and that's happened many times, and even publicly. I can recall President George H.W. Bush coming to Washington and defending Bill Clinton on his policy toward Iraq, and therefore there has been this kind of supportive relationship between the old president and the new president, which I don't see unfolding at this point.
Yeah, that would be unusual if that were to happen, perhaps a little bit of change in views. You also have to think back probably also to Eisenhower and Kennedy and the guidance that Eisenhower was able to give Kennedy during some dark days, be it the Cuban Missile Crisis or Bay of Pigs. Professor,
Right.
Appreciate you being here, sir. May that come true. May these two gentlemen get along as President Obama leaves office. It'd certainly be a great thing for the country.
It'll be great for the country.
Yes, it would. Thanks, Professor.
Thank
Talk to
you.
you soon.